Hello students, this is 4236, English 4236, and it is 19th century novels, and we are going through A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. So we have come to the third book, and let us start the third book. The name of the third book is The Track of a Storm, and let us see what happens in this final book of the novel. So chapter wise, we have to go through the chapter wise description. So let us start with chapter 1. It is In Secret. So what happens in secret? Let us see. Here, the travel through France proves difficult for Durnay, as Durnay was an immigrant and he is traveling through the difficult time of France. So he has difficulties in every phase of his journey. But as we know that Laurie is also going to France because of his official work for Tinsel Bank's work. He is safe and he has no problem while he is traveling. But Turney and Laurie, they are traveling separately. They do not know that both of them are going. I mean, Turney knows, but Laurie doesn't know that Turney is going to France in this time, when it is the time of revolution. Okay, hostile revolutionaries frequently stop him and question him. The revolutionaries stop him on his way and ask a lot of questions to him. Upon his arrival in Paris, the revolutionaries confined him to a prison called La Force. So when they heard that Durnay is an immigrant and he has come back to France and he belongs to the Every Monday family, he is taken to a prison called La Force. Now, Durnay protests and reminds his jailers of his rights. He says that he has a right, but the jailer is reluctant to listen to anything which he says. However, the guard responds that as an immigrant, Durnay, whom he refers as an Every Monday, has no rights. So they know that Every Monday, as the twin brothers were very much, cruel to the lower class people, and they tortured them so much. And this Durnay is the son of the elder of the twin brothers. So as an Every Monday, he has no rights. So he has to go to the jail. The guard hands Durnay over to Defarge with the instructions in secret. So he is imprisoned in secret. Nobody knows that Durnay is in prison. And Defarge, you know who is Defarge? Defarge is the wine shop owner, and he is the leader of the male population in the revolution. And but he was previously a servant in Dr. Manet's house, so he has a little bit of soft corner for Durnay, for Lucy, little Lucy, Dr. Manet, everybody. As he is being led away, Durnay converses with the wine merchant. Wine merchant is Defarge. Defarge wonders aloud why Durnay would choose to return to France in the age of that sharp female newly born called La Guillotine. Why did Durnay choose this time of revolution, to come back to France? Because now they're using La Guillotine to behead the aristocrats and the higher level people, and even the king and the queen, they were also beheaded by this La Guillotine later on, but not now. So why did he choose this time of his I mean, this revolution? It is called Revolutionary France at that time. So why did he come at that time? Durnay asks Defarge for help, but Defarge refuses because he won't be able to help because of the other revolutionaries. He says, "I can't help you." At La Force, Durnay feels he has entered the world of the dead. People all around him look pale. they seem to be ghosts now. Uh, Nothing to be, nothing is charming. They are all, they have to face death, and they are all like dead people. So he feels very, very, um, terrified over there. A fellow prisoner welcomes him to the prison and says that he hopes that Turney will not be kept in secret. Anyway, another prison says that don't you worry, you won't be kept in secret. Uh, Actually, he would be sent to a solitary confinement, that is a single cell where only Turney will be there and no other prisoners will be there. And it happened like that. Turney has indeed been sentenced to total isolation, and he soon finds himself in a cell measuring only 5 paces by 4.5. It was a very small room. So this is how we find that he was uh, imprisoned in secret. So what we see over here, both Mr. Lorry and Dernier travel to France, but separately. Dernier has to face many difficulties because of the revolutionaries, but Lorry doesn't have to face any problem because he is going on official purpose. In the town of Beauvais, this is the native place of Dr. Manette, who is often referred to as the Doctor of Beauvais. You have to remember that sometimes we call Dr. Manette as the Doctor of Beauvais. You have to remember this. So there a crowd became very crazy when they saw Dernier, who was saved by a local postmaster later on. Before entering Paris, Dernier was stopped again and again. Here he meets Mr. Defarge, who confirms the former to be the immigrant every Monday and sends him to the prison of La Force, as we have earlier learned about La Force. Defarge asked Dernier whether he was the husband of Lucy, and Dernier says, "Yes, I am the husband of Lucy." He also says that Dernier has made a great mistake coming to France at this critical time. All the noblemen and aristocrats were being beheaded every day in large numbers by the means of la guillotine, the axe to behead the heads. So Johnny requested Defarge to inform Mr. Lorry about his imprisonment, but Defarge refuses, as I told you earlier. Later on, Dernier is taken to a separate cell. Thus, he was jailed in secret without the knowledge of anybody. Nobody knew that he was in jail. He then thinks of Dr. Manette's imprisonment. Now he thinks of Dr. Manette's imprisonment when he was in prison, you know. It is to be noted that throughout this chapter, we hear echoes of Dr. Manette in the background. Along with Journey, there were lots of prisoners in the prison of La Force, all aristocratic people who look pale, who were elegant once, now worried, all look like ghosts. Dickens describes this gathering as ghosts, ghosts all, the ghost of beauty, the ghost of stateliness, the ghost of elegance, the ghost of pride, the ghost of age, all waiting for their dismissal from the desolate shore. So this is how Dickens describes the aristocratic people when they were in La Force. Dernier's journey is a journey towards the center of the kingdom of death, and it ends in a damn lonely cell. So this is chapter 1. Now we go to chapter 2. The grindstone. What happens with this grindstone over here? Let us see. Lucy and Dr. Manette storm into the Paris branch of Tellson's Bank to find Mr. Lorry over there. So when Lucy and Dr. Manette received the letters from Dernier, in the previous book, they learn that Darnay has come to France. So they immediately follow and come to Telson's Bank in Paris, where they find Mr. Lorry. They inform him that Darnay sits imprisoned in La Force. Mr. Lorry didn't know that Darnay was in prison. He learns it from Lucy and Dr. Manette. Dr. Manette remains confident that he can use his standing as a one-time prisoner of the Bastille to help rescue his son-in-law. He thinks that he can somehow rescue his son-in-law from the revolutionaries. Anyway, Laurie sends Lucy into the back room of the bank so that he can speak to Dr. Manette in private. He and Manette look out into the courtyard where throngs of people sharpen their weapons on a grindstone. Here we find that there were different kinds of weapons which were used by the revolutionaries. Now they are being sharpened by cruel people over there. Laurie explains that the mob is preparing to kill the prisoners. Manette rushes into the crowd and soon a cry arises, "Help for the Bastille prisoners kindred in La Force." So they would like to help the relative who is in prison in La Force, the relative of Dr. Manette basically. So here the grindstone is used for a different purpose, to sharpen the weapons. That's it. So Mr. Lorry was sitting in his bank when he figured out two people rushing towards him. They were Dr. Manette and Lucy. They rushed to Paris after receiving the letters from Darnay. They were accompanied by little Lucy and Miss Pross. Little Lucy is their only daughter, and we know who is Miss Pross. They had come to know about Darnay's imprisonment, which shocked Mr. Lorry, who had no idea of this at all. This is very dramatic, and Mr. Lorry is breathless with surprise and anxiety. Dr. Manette doesn't face any problem as he was an ex-prisoner of the Bastille and the victim of the aristocrats. But the revolutionaries promise him to release his son-in-law from prison. We find a whole paragraph in this chapter describing the enraged and bloodthirsty people sharpening their weapons on a grindstone, which is being worked by two men with horrible and cruel faces. People have become crazy, ready to kill more and more victims. So this is what we find in chapter 2. Now we go to chapter 3. In chapter 3, we see the shadow. The name of the chapter is The Shadow. Fearing that Lucy and Manette's presence might compromise the bank's business, Laurie ushers Lucy, her daughter, and Miss Pross to a nearby lodging. He leaves Jerry Cruncher to guard them. However, Jerry Cruncher will be there to take care of them. Back at Telson's, Defarge approaches Laurie with a message from Manette. Defarge has come with a message from Dr. Manette for Mr. Laurie. Following Manette's instructions, Laurie leads Defarge to Lucy. Now, as because Defarge demands to see Lucy, he has to be taken to Lucy. And you know, Madame Defarge would also like to see Lucy, little Lucy, everybody. She wants to get, introduced to them so that she can later on take her revenge on them. Defarge claims that Madame Defarge must accompany them as she will familiarize herself with the faces of Lucy, her daughter, and Miss Pross in order to better protect them in the future. But no, it is ironical over here. She won't protect them, rather she would take revenge on them. The woman known as the Vengeance also comes. Do you remember Vengeance? Vengeance is the woman who was always with Madame Defarge and helping her in the meeting of the names of the victims. Upon arriving at the lodging where Lucy was staying, Defarge gives Lucy a note from the imprisoned Darnay. So Darnay had a note for Lucy, which Mr. Defarge gives it to Lucy. It urges her to take courage. There, Darnay says Lucy to be courageous, not to, panic and be in her state. She was so, weak that she used to faint frequently. Turning to Madame Defarge, Lucy begs her to show Darnay some mercy. We know that Madame Defarge is the leader, one of the leaders, like Madame Defarge and Mr. Defarge. Both of them were leaders, so she wants mercy from her. But Madame Defarge coldly responds that the revolution will not stop for the sake of Lucy or her family. So here in this chapter we find Mr. Lorry fears he may endanger Tensel's bank by allowing Darnay's family to stay there. So he finds an apartment for Lucy and her daughter somewhere else and leaves Jerry Cruncher to watch over them. That night, Defarge visited Mr. Lorry, who he meets after long 17 years. Do you remember when he had gone to bring Dr. Manette back to London? At that time, we find they met, so it has been long 17 years. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3, these are all in France. Okay, some of the chapters are in France, some of them are in England, so we have to go remember those. Okay, Defarge carried a note in Dr. Manette's own handwriting to inform that Darnay was quite safe where he was kept. The Defarges, along with the Vengeance, went to see Lucy's daughter, and Miss Crouse. Lucy was in great distress and appealed to Madame Defarge to be kind to Darnay. But Madame Defarge is full of hatred for Lucy and her daughter as they belong to the Evremonde family. The reason of this hatred is that Madame Defarge is the sister of that girl who was dishonored and disgraced and whose brother was murdered by the twin brothers, the Evremonde brothers. Now, can you understand why Madame Defarge was so against the Evremondes? We'll know about it in details later on. So, Madame Defarge remains unmoved because the poor women folk had always been treated brutally by the upper classes, and now it is the poor people's turn to take revenge. She says, all our lives we have seen our sister women suffer in themselves and in their children. Poverty, nakedness, hunger, thirst, sickness, misery, oppression and neglect of all kinds. We have borne this a long time. Lucy sees the evil in Madame Defarge's eyes and says that she has cast a shadow on her and her hopes. So this is named the shadow. There is a shadow which Madame Defarge has cast on the hopes of Lucy. Mr. Lorry himself is worried about Lucy, her husband, and her little child. It is a very dark chapter with full of suspense everywhere. So that's enough for today. We have discussed 3 of the chapters. You have to revise the details of these chapters. Thank you so much, students, for hearing so patiently. See you in the next class.